Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Kathy with TurnbullsThreads. This is a channel where I talk about the things that I'm doing, mostly knitting and cross stitch. And I am in the Midwest of the country. So if you're ever in the area, feel free to see if we can meet up somewhere. Let's see. It's snowing outside and it's distracting me because it's April and it's snowing and I don't want it to be snowing. Like, it was so hot on Friday. Temperatures were insanely warm and nobody is turning on their air conditioning yet because it's snowing today, so it can swing fairly quickly. Yeah. Snow. Anyways, sidetrack. So how this is gonna go is I'm gonna talk about my projects and then I will talk a little bit about some acquisitions that I got because they pertain to the thing that I will talk about at the very end, which is a little bit more personal things that happened with me. So that's kind of the way that I plan on running this one this week. We'll see how it goes. I do need to remember to mention two people that mentioned me. Thank you very much. So recovering book hoarder, after I shouted her out, she returned the favor. So back at you. Thank you so much for the really kind words about my knitting project last time. I do love it, and I did get some more wear out of it while I was doing things. See the end if you want to find out what I was wearing it for. And then Teslin, who is the person who's in charge of the cell that we are very loosely working on, the Royal Holiday Cell. So thank you both for mentioning me, and with that we'll get into the stuff that has been made. So, do I have fully finished objects? I do have some fully finished objects. Can you guess what one of the fully finished objects is? A hint, it's very bright and green. Yes, I did. So this is my fully finished object. It is a test knit that is finishing up today or tomorrow. I believe it is the Falling Leaves cardigan, but I will make sure to put the right name on it. In the description below from Jennifer Owens, and it was a fun test knit. I enjoyed it. It has very interesting technique, doesn't actually involve any sewing, but the way that she's made the pattern for this particular cardigan, the sleeves are more like set-in sleeves than they are like your typical like a drop shoulder or raglan or circular yoke sleeves. So that was a really cool thing. I enjoyed this knit. I used Mulberry silk from Darn Good Yarn, held with I believe a thread weight cashmere green color, and yeah, it creates a nice marl effect, and I'm very happy with this one. I really like how it turned out. So yes, I have a finished object. In fact, I have more than one fully finished object. So the next things that I have is I finished these guys. So this is a pair of mittens. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. The Celtic Horse? I don't remember exactly which one. The pattern name, proper name, will be below. I knit these using, what is it? Lion Brand, their WoolEase, I believe it is. So recycled, partially recycled wool and a bunch of acrylic. So these are machine washable, which is very important for me because they were mittens and I knew they were going to get dirty. They are dirty, but I don't know that you can necessarily tell that. So these are mittens, but they are also flippy top mittens. So yeah, I used these very intensely for 2 weeks. I did do a little bit of pattern modification. So like for this part where you add on the ribbing around the top, instead of sewing that and casting on totally new stitches, I just picked up stitches because that was easier and better for me. The loop at the top is an I-cord loop that I added. And then when I was putting it together, I actually added some snappies here, so that they would stay closed, because that was one of the issues, is that the tops were a little bit, like, you didn't have enough overlap without something to help secure it so that it was like pretty firmly together. So I did do that, but it is a very beautiful colorwork pattern. I was really happy with it, and for it being a free pattern, I highly recommend it. So yes, my horse ones, and then see if I can find them. I do have a couple of, here they are. I have a couple of cross stitch finishes as well, some mill hill kits. So I have Rainboots. Are we gonna focus? Maybe there. It's really snowing outside. So Froggy Rainboots. Another mill hill kit. A little sheep. There we go. And it jingles. Floral Birdcage. There we go. And finally, Violet. Oh, there's my back. Back isn't bad. Yeah. So, I had a fairly busy March. I had a bunch of things finished. And I guess technically fully finished would be the cardigan and the gloves. The mill hill kits need to be fully finished. It's something that I am going to be working on. So with that done, what am I working on? What things do I still have in progress? So I have a major knitting thing, but I haven't touched it, so my whip will not come out until next month, because like this actually I just finished. I finished knitting this 2 days ago and blocked it. So yeah, it might be 3 days ago. 3 days ago and blocked it. So with this being like literally just off the needles, I don't have any whips because this had a deadline, and so it needed to be done faster. But I have my typical little baby beanie whip going. I did finish some of those, but they're gone, so they're not here. And then the other thing that I have as something that I'm working on is this guy. So this is a fun project. It'll eventually get finished like this. I need to weave in my ends and then sew a button on it. But they, what do you call them? Like, it's a towel that you put in your kitchen, and you, with the button, this will go around like the stove handle, as long as you have like a pole stove handle. And then you have a really nice way to grab your kitchen towel and wipe your hands. And I love these. I have 2 of them. This would be number 3. They make good hostess gifts if you're having travel somewhere and you're going to stay with someone. And I have a bunch of towels to be made into these, so I need to finish making them. It was a really fast, quick project. I don't know if I'll I may write up the instructions. We'll see. So, yes, that was my other work in progress for knitting. Now, I have a lot more for cross stitch this time. And I've been working on a number of things. So the first thing that I have is my work project. So my current work project is, let me pull it out. This one. So Aqua Chick by Jim Shore. So that's what the package says it'll look like. I have finished the cross stitch section for the front piece, and I have started the cross stitch section for the back piece. It's not nearly done. But once I finish doing all of the cross stitch, then I'll plan on going back and doing all of the beads. So it gets work done during work meetings. Yep. Work meetings where I don't have to be super involved. The next thing that I have that I've been working on is this one. So Stoney Creek's Joy Silhouette. It is, this might have been something that I started for Christmas in July. Yeah. So I have actually gotten a lot further along than I was last time you've seen this. So I am at the point where I need to move my hoop. But this is where I am. And it's looking really good. So I don't know if you can tell, but Joy, and I'm gonna do all of the things around this. It's done using Blanc or White by DMC, as well as I believe Mystique, which is an artiste floss from Hobby Lobby. And then I hold one strand of each of those together to do all of the stitching. And then I have this border here that I decided to switch up a little bit. So this one is in just plain Blanc. So it does stand out more than the other colors do, and I actually like how it like pops a little bit. So that is where I am with this guy. So there's another border of basically snowflakes around the edge of it. Well, yeah, you can see. So I have the big border of snowflakes around the edge, and then it'll be time to bead everything. So I will need to get some of the little spangly things, and I don't have either of the 2 stars. So that is where I am on that. All the thread that goes with it. Man, I slept wrong last night, and now every time I pull in a certain direction, I feel it. Getting older. I'm not old yet. I refuse to be old yet. So the next thing that I've been working on is this guy. So this is Fish and Chips. It's a long dog sampler, and this has been a very fun monochromatic stitch for me, because I find that I like to have at least one monochromatic going on just because they're so much fun. Mostly monochromatic. There are a couple of things, so there's a couple of like little motifs that don't necessarily seem to go quite with the Fish and Chips theme. So there's like a couple of butterflies floating around, and then there was the star and the moons, which that is slightly nautical, but those ones I'm actually using a DMC Diamante to do it with instead of the Ecru that I am stitching everything else in. But the reason why I'm doing monochromatic and Ecru is because I'm putting it on this. So, lovely piece of Aida dyed by BananaOil. So, Amity, Arab, yes, this is because of YouTube. So they introduced me to BananaOil on their channel, and I love it, and they are gorgeous. And so because of the high variegation, I wanted to do the long dog in a slightly simpler one. So that is the progress that I have so far, and I really enjoy how it's looking so far. Still have a bunch of work to do on it, but it's coming along quite nicely. So that's my long dog. The next project that I have is probably the one that will get finished the soonest. So yeah, I started this one I think for Nora November, and this is become a focus piece for me recently. So I'm talking about Poppy by Nora Corbett. So this is what it looks like, and I'm stitching it on an Opalescent Aida. So we'll see if, yeah, you might be able to see a little bit of the sparkle. So I am here. I am so close. I'm at the bottom part of that gorgeous, gorgeous dress that she has. So as soon as I finish stitching the dress, we will be cutting, mostly because it'll be pretty much done. So we'll go ahead and cut off some of the extra over here, and then I think I'm gonna put her on a scroll frame in order to do the beading and the back stitch, because could I do it in hand? Yes. Do I want to do it in hand? Not really. And I have a couple of scroll frames, so we'll put her on a scroll. We'll put her on a scroll frame to do the beading and the back stitch. But just like look at her, and like the way that Nora does the colors for it and manages to balance like these huge areas of block stitching, because you can see like I'm just focusing on one color here. Like you have fun paths to follow and large blocks of stitching, so it's fairly relaxing, which is really nice, unlike some of the confetti stuff that I have been doing. And yeah, I've really appreciated this one, and I am looking forward to finishing her soon. She's looking so good, and I'm so happy. So, yes, that one should be done soon. The next one that I want to talk about is one of the very few styles that I have going on. So this, there we go. I haven't gotten as much done as I should have. I am behind, but this is Paradiso Canto 34 from Heaven and Earth Designs. This is where I am right now on the front. that is what my back looks like. So you can see that, like, extreme cross, well, I wouldn't call it extreme cross country. It's cross country within the hoop. As long as it's within the hoop, we're going cross country with it. I did get a good chunk done. So I'm close to being finished with one page. And I've got sections of the other two, but they just sent out the second installment of it. So yeah, I'm a little bit farther behind than I would like on this one. This one needs to get a little bit of love and attention because I would like to get 6 pages of it done. So the 6 full pages I would really like to finish for this. So hopefully next time you see it, I will have had more done. But this is fairly confetti-ish, which, oh, like, it's creating a really nice picture. But it's so confetti. Like, so much counting. And I have to remember to count right. And that's a problem. Oh well. Fine. So yeah, that's the progress that I've made on Canto 34. I am pretty pleased with I'm pleased with how much I've done. I should be further along, but that is beside the point. We're going with it. We have done what we have done, so we shall go with what we have. So that brings me to, I believe, my final. I'm getting through these really fast for some reason. I'm apparently not talking as much as I usually do, or I have less projects. One of the two. I don't feel like I have less, well, I might have less projects. I did focus on a number of things pretty intensely over the last month. So, there might be less projects. But the last one is one that I am super excited about. So, how to do this. So, this is my start on my epic mandala. So, I don't know how many people, I mean, I know it's fairly popular. He's gotten to be number 1 on, like, streaming on a number of things, but if you enjoy musicals and you enjoy the Odyssey, or musical theater and the Odyssey, or just really good music for that matter, there's this guy named Jorge Rivera Herranz, commonly known as Jade on a lot of his social media, and he started writing a musical called Epic. So this musical is based off of the Odyssey. So following Odysseus, like end of the Battle of Troy to when he gets home. So this guy starts writing this musical, and he goes about it he went about it in a very interesting way. So he started writing, and then as he was getting closer to getting places where he wanted to be, he was like, okay, I don't want to do this the traditional route, right? So he has a lot of influence in this from, like, video games and, like, anime and pop culture kind of influence in terms of how his music is getting written and, like, how he was seeing things play out. So he didn't want it to be really, like, a traditional musical, like, necessarily Broadway. This will be shown on Broadway. He's thinking more like if this gets put in, like, doing animated versions of it or, like, video game versions kind of thing, or Maybe like if you're doing a live production, more like a Cirque du Soleil, and like incorporating a lot of new technology into how it's going, instead of being like the more traditional, this is a stage, this is the play, everyone sings, this is how this goes. So that was kind of his goal of it. And so he starts writing these pieces, and then he starts posting them like in the pandemic on TikTok and being like, hey, post it. And then he started auditioning people for the different parts that he needed sung for this like concept music albums for this quote unquote musical. So that was what he started doing, and this gained a ton of traction. So he then started putting out his album. It's a really interesting story if you go through it. But anyways, I got introduced to it fairly early. For a while there, one of his songs got tagged a bunch on some Instagram stories, and so I happened to listen to it, and I was like, that's really interesting. Let me find this and listen to it, and fell in love with the first album. And then have followed along with it since. Like, they're so catchy. I sing along to a lot of them. I have listened to the entire musical. It's like 2.5 hours of music, like 2.5 hours of singing music. It's really good. Follows the story of Odysseus. If you can't tell, I really enjoyed it. And yes, so because of that, it kind of inspired me to make a mandala cross-stitch pattern from it. So far I have 3 of the 3 motifs kind of, well, there's a number of different albums. I think there's 9 in total. So I have 3 of the 9 referenced now. All 9 do get referenced. And there's a couple of little things in there that I have fun kind of pointing to different things in the musical. But I have, I believe, Vengeance Saga, the Cyclops Saga, and the Thunderbringer Saga stitched in already. So I think, I don't know if I'm going to move my hoop next or not. Because this is my own design, though, I'm finding once again that I didn't do the necessarily best symbol picking. So I do need to edit my pattern a little bit so that it's a little bit easier for me to read, because some of those symbols they're not easily differentiated between each other, at least in the printed version that I have. So I need to figure out how to print it bigger and change a couple of those symbols so that the symbols that are right next to each other are in the same. So I used up all the space on my card. So, new card, try again. So I was talking about symbols, right? So symbols not working together. So I do need to, once again, do some pattern editing so that it will work. So it'll be easier for me to read, because I was looking at a certain section, I was like, oh, like I'm almost at the point where I need to move my hoop. Like I might be able to get an eye here and an eye here, but like this is almost full. And the next section that I would be working on would be frustrating if I leave my chart the way it currently is. So I need to change my chart so that I am not very annoyed with it as I'm doing it. Yeah. So, with that being said, that is my final work in progress. And yes, so before I do the two things that I want to talk about that I bought because of the life thingy, I'm going to take a quick detour and talk a little bit about WipGo since I'm doing it kind of. I've been very far behind and not actually been keeping up and doing things properly. It didn't help that I was away for 2 weeks at the beginning of this month. Yeah, that did not help at all. But I will tell you what things were called for the last month, March and April. So the things that need to happen soon. So, for my cross stitch WipGo thing, I have managed to get 3 things out of the 8 that have been called. Well, half essentially of what I should be have done. Has been done. Yes. So I have not really touched March's and I haven't touched April's and I got half of February's done. Think about the same for knitting, but hopefully I'll finish some of these this month. Yeah. My WipGo is if I can finish it by the end of the year, it's fine. These are goals to finish by the end of the year. And even if I don't finish the goals, it's still okay because this isn't like, I'm not going to punish myself for not finishing anything. But things to aspire to. So, the things that I was to aspire to in the month of March were dye fabric using Rit dye. And then go through 3 physical books and pick out charts. And I have an optional bonus film of floss tube extra. So, I will plan on doing that, just not today. Maybe this week. Hey, I could do it tomorrow and it would technically still be done in March. I probably won't finish dyeing the fabric with Rit, but I could go through 3 physical books. Probably. And get that done. Meh, why not? So those were March's calls for the cross stitch side of things. So for the knitting side of things, it was, one was teach one skill at a knitting class, which I didn't actually have anyone sign up for any knitting classes in March, so I really couldn't do that one. But I do have a casting on knitting class that is happening in April, which will be the first time me doing casting on as a class. So I will be teaching a new skill set at one of my knitting classes, so I will be able to cross that off within the week, I think, maybe. And then the other thing was to kit up a new project from Stash, which I haven't. So I have a bunch of projects kitted up already. I just haven't decided on anything new yet to kit up, I guess is where I am on that. So I need to figure out what my new project will be. I think I know what I'm going to do. I'm planning, maybe, on knitting something for my mother. And maybe I can kit that up from Stash. If not, I'll have to find something, right? One can never have too many projects, right? Right. So those were my March calls for WipGo, KnitGo. My April calls, which will be next month, for the knitting side of things, is learn one new skill. So maybe I can combine the kit up from Stash and the learn one new skill and kit up whatever I'm going to make with this new skill from Stash. That would be perfect, wouldn't it? I just need to figure out what skill I want to do. I might, So, I've dabbled in a bunch of things, knitting wise. So I've done cables. I've done a bunch of lace, as you can see. There's some lace patterns in this. I've done brioche. I've done mosaic knitting. I've done some color work. But there's this like reversible color work where like I think it's double knitting color work essentially, where like the front and the back both show the image, like because most of the time, at least with color work, with what I've done so far, either you have floats going on, so like your back, like your front is the pretty side and then the back is interesting, but it's floats, so it doesn't have the same picture as like your front side does. Or you have mosaic knitting where you're slipping stitches, and that likewise has a little bit more floats than it does on the other side. But there is a type of color work where the front is an image and then the back is literally like that image but in reverse colors, right? So if you did black and white and say you had a horse on the front and the horse was black and the background was white, on the other side it would be a white horse on a black background. Looks very time intensive, but very cool and interesting, and I do want to try that. Or maybe like, so there's also some that I've seen recently where they do like an optical illusion where if you hold the item in a certain angle you can see like a picture, but if you hold it straight on you don't see it. So either of those would be kind of cool to do. I don't know. I need to look things up. And see what patterns I have, because I don't really want to buy a ton of new patterns. If I do my mom's gift, I'd be willing to buy a pattern for that. But I have a ton of patterns, and I have books, and I have like all kinds of knitting stuff already, and I don't necessarily want to go and buy a new thing for that. So I might look in my patterns and see what I have as well, because I think I have one pattern that might be that, but I don't know if it tells you the technique. We shall see. So that was one of the my Knit Go calls for April. The other one is to finish 1 week of the temperature blanket. And in the video I'm still editing, because there's so much editing for it. So much. I think show my temperature blanket. So I am very far behind. Like 2020 project. But if I can get a week done, that will be 1 week less that I have to do on it. And considering it's snowing outside, it would be a appropriate project to pull out right now, because it's a blanket, so it's super heavy and warm. Okay, so that is my knitting whip go talked about. My cross stitch whip go, I have 2 things that got pulled as well. So one of them is to fully finish something finished within the year, which I really do need to do, because if I plan on entering anything into the state fair, which is in August, and all of the entries have to be gotten in like July, I need to fully finish some things. I know I have some things that I'm planning. I have one thing I know that I plan on putting in a pillow. I think that was finished within the year. If I finish Poppy, like, she's going in a frame, and she will eventually be going on my wall. Yeah. So, I can definitely, if nothing else, I can put some backings on some of my Mill Hill stuff and like actually finish those off. That would also work. And then the second one that got pulled for the cross stitch one is learn a new cross stitch skill or technique. Optional bonus, film a floss tube extra. So I have a number of extras that I can film going through books, learning a new skill. If you would like, I could also film like learning a new knitting skill maybe. So that is my WIPGO goals. I am so far behind on these, but I might be able to catch up on some of them. We'll see. But speaking of WIPGO, and part of the reason why I'm talking about this is because one of my knitting goals for WIPGO was to knit a project's worth of yarn using powder dye. That was one of February's goals, which I did complete on time. And while I was doing that, because I had a project and I had put aside some undyed yarn already for the project, this was ready. I was like, might as well have some fun with this, and we'll go ahead and play around with dyeing some fabric for cross stitch as well. So I'm going to show you what I dyed. So my actual WIPGO dye goal is this set. Oh, they're so pretty. So I'm going to be making the About Me tee with them. And yes, that is what they look like pretty much in real life. So yes, first time dyeing with powder dye. I think it's essentially a RIT powder dye, or it might be a flower. I don't know. Whatever powder dye I have, it's a basic big box one because I couldn't figure out where my other powder dye was. So this is what it ended up with. It has obviously like speckled areas. So let's see if it'll focus on it. Yeah. Beep. Don't focus on my face, focus on this. Yes. So there's little areas of speckling in there. It's got some nice washing. Purples and blues on like a gray. And like definitely each skein is a unique, let me go ahead and unwind it. So you can see like it's going to be a very interesting how it'll turn out, I think. I am super excited about getting to work with this. I should be, I dyed it myself, so if I'm not excited about this is a problem. But I am actually super excited about getting to work with this one. I don't know, so I have kind of my next two knitting projects kind of lined up for me, but yes. Yay! So first thing that I dyed, super happy about it. Enjoyed doing that part. I do plan on dyeing some more at some point. So the other thing that I dyed was some cross stitch fabric. So I went ahead and dyed some Lugana, some linen, and some Hardinger. And so here's what the fabric looks like. So so they were all dyed in the same vat, essentially. So the same dye color got kind of thrown with them, but they do look different. I think just based off of the properties of them. Also, how I didn't create like a big dye and then just pour the premix dye on it. I went ahead and did like threw some different colors to try and get some speckling like I did with the yarn. So I really like how the yarn speckled out. Some of this didn't work out quite the same way. So we will come to that one shortly. But first off, this is the Hardinger. You can see like some of that speckling there. Yeah. It's a really pretty purple color. Is that? I think that's close to being like the actual true color of it. Yeah. But like you can see there's areas where like the speckles definitely show through. So that is how the Hardinger looks. The linen, which is the next one I'm going to show you, didn't turn out quite like I wanted it to. It ended up with some issues. So this one, yeah, it got some really strong signals where the speckles came in. So yeah, I think that's about the right color. So I don't know, this one will have to be probably a very specific pattern for whatever I use it on. But, I mean, I dyed it. It's very interesting, like the contrasting colors though between these two. So linen dyeing very differently than the Hardinger did, and both of them dyeing quite differently than the final one, which is the Lugana. So my Lugana kind of took a totally different hue, and I'm actually probably most pleased with how the Lugana turned out. So you can see it does have some of the mottled speckles all the way up, and yeah, it looks really good, and I have no idea what I'm gonna do with it. I have no idea what I'm gonna do with these guys yet, but first time dyeing, quite happy with it. I think it turned out decently well. I will be repeating. Might not do, so I believe my goal is to do one with Rit dye. We'll see how that one goes. We'll see how doing a Rit dye versus doing a powdered dye. So I'm calling the Rit dye like not the powdered one. I'm planning on doing the liquid version of it. Just to be clear. So having done this, congratulations to all of the people who dye fabric and floss and yarn on the regular, because that is a bunch of time and effort in the setup and then like you wait for so much time, and then like at the very end, like getting a lot of that excess color out. There's a reason why they're more expensive. So that is everything except haul. So if you don't want to hear about the personal side of things or my haul, thanks for being around. If you are sticking around, we're probably going to be talking for a little bit longer. So the haul is related to the personal, because I took a trip with my sister and we went to Alaska for 2 weeks. And while in Alaska, as you do, getting a souvenir project kind of thing. So while I was in Alaska, we went to a yarn shop in Anchorage, where I picked up this guy. So this, yeah, very pretty. So this is yak sock. So it is 20% yak, 10% nylon, and 70% merino. They also had some quillet stuff there, but that was outside of my budget by a lot. So like a single skein of a lot less than this, like 25, maybe 50 grams. They're like, you're looking at $90. Yeah. So expensive. So that one is, I think the Quilla is musk ox yarn. So yarn from the musk ox. And I believe it is super, super, super soft, but it is also super, super, super expensive. And yeah, I didn't have an extra $90 to just drop on that right then. I would like to get some at some point, but that was a lot of money right then. And I was like, yeah, I don't have that to put on it right now. And it's the very beginning of our trip. So no. Maybe in the future. Maybe I'll buy it and have it shipped at some point. Anyways. So instead I got this, which is hand-dyed, locally inspired. So this is called the Kenai River. Did we go by it? I don't think we went by the Kenai River, but we were definitely on the Kenai Peninsula. So my sister and I flew into Anchorage. We had a week in Anchorage, and then we did basically a trip north. So while we were in Anchorage, we did visit the yarn shop, which is also like attached with the quilting store, and in the quilting store section of it, I found this. There we go. So they had little cross stitch kits, so cute. So this is Ski Moose, and I don't know how many people watched it, but Rocky and Bullwinkle, really old cartoon. The moose here reminds me so much of Bullwinkle, and yes. So this was the cross stitch kit that I got as a reminder for our trip to Alaska. And then, of course, the yarn. I will have to find projects to do with those things, but that's my haul. So now let's talk about the trip, because that is kind of the personal side of things. So I alluded to it last time when I was like, yeah, next time we'll have something to talk about, like why we're doing this, like timing, etc. So we went to Alaska for 2 weeks, like I said. We spent the first week staying with some people that we knew in Anchorage and kind of exploring the Anchorage area. And in addition to that, we got to see the ceremonial start for the Iditarod, because that was happening the weekend that we got there. And that was so much fun. Flying up was interesting on my part. Things did not work out how I expected them to. Got to sleep in the Seattle airport. Seattle airport is fine. Don't recommend sleeping there. It's an airport. I don't recommend sleeping in an airport. They're not very comfortable. You don't get a bunch of sleep. So yeah, that was fun. So I get up there, managed to land on Friday, and then we kind of did a little bit of exploring around the area before going to the couple's house that we were staying with. We went to one of the malls that had they were having a native market that day, so got to see a lot of like the native artisans and like some of the things that they're making, and so many gorgeous things. Like there was a ton of fur. items around. They had ivory carvings. They had someone who's making like teeny tiny miniature woven baskets, which were so cool. Someone had knit some things up using the quillet yarn that I talked at length about just now. Beadwork, paintings, like really impressive stuff that they had going on up there. So we did that on Friday. And then Saturday was the start of the Iditarod, the ceremonial start. So we went over to Anchorage again. Saturday, got to see the starts. There were 33 teams, I believe, this year that started out. I don't know how many finished, but there were 17 rookie teams this year, which was unusual that there were so many rookie teams. Part of it was because it had been a really weird winter in Alaska this year. Not a ton of snow, which meant that instead of doing the traditional start from like the Anchorage Willow area and going north up to Nome, the Iditarod actually ran from Fairbanks over to Nome because they actually had enough snow so that the dogs could actually go the entire way, because if you started in Anchorage, there wasn't enough snow to go up. Yeah. So, and like by no snow, I mean there was no snow really anywhere except higher up in the mountains. In the ground area, like dry, which me and my sister were not unhappy about because that meant that we didn't have to drive in snow in the mountains. Yes, no snow was not a bad thing. For us, but it did mean that for the ceremonial start, they actually cut it a lot shorter than it would typically be. And because there hadn't been any snow, they had like their storages that they had with their snow. He went from a bare bone street to like this section of snow just going down the middle of the road that like this was your path. And so they had enough snow for the path that the sleds were going to take, and that was it. There was no extra snow anywhere to be found. So we watched all of the dogs go by, which was really fun. We got to go out on a lake, ice walking out on a lake while we were up there. We did a little bit of regular hiking. Went out to Thunderbird Falls, which was frozen at this time of year because it is so cold. It just has no snow. During this part of the escapade, so we had been walking on the lake on Sunday, and we were using yak tracks or like ice grippers. Didn't have those Monday when we went hiking to the falls, and rapidly learned that even though it's fairly nice, fairly warm, no snow, there's still ice in a lot of places. And yeah, we went and got some ice grippers after that because we were still planning on hiking the rest of the day, and after having done some fun sliding and slipping on the very short trek to the overlook for the falls, we decided that we needed something to help us like not do quite as much of that. Yeah. So we then climbed Mount Baldy, which was fairly close but gave phenomenal views. Like, it was a hike up. It was definitely a hike, but what you could see for miles. You could see into the Cook Inlet. You could see across over to the, I believe, volcano that they have up there, Mount Spur, I think is the name of that. You could see like the mountain ranges all around you. It was gorgeous up top. It was really windy, but it was very gorgeous. And then coming down, we took some impromptu sledding with no sled. So that was fun. We managed to go to the Matanuska Glacier. The glacier, like, you know those pictures that you see with glaciers where you're like, there's no way it's like, that is blue and like bright blue. It's blue and bright blue in real life. Like, the pictures are not lying. That is what it looks like. So it was really neat to be able to go walk on the glacier, get to drink some glacier water, go explore the whole area. So it is a guided tour. It's not you wandering off and doing your own thing and potentially dying. It's the tour company goes and takes you on the safe ways to go around, but you get to do a bunch of things with that. And then we were told that we had to see snow because we went to Alaska in the winter. So if you go to Alaska in the winter, you must see snow. And everyone was apologizing for having no snow. So we went up to Hatcher's Pass in that area and saw snow, lots of snow. It's a very interesting experience to be driving along. You're like, oh, avalanche area, do not stop for the next 5 miles. Okay. Yep, we are definitely not in Iowa anymore. But we went up to Hatcher's Pass around, I believe, the Independence Gold Mine area. So it's an abandoned gold mine, and like you can do snowshoeing and sledding or skiing, etc. in that area. Did a little bit of snowshoeing. Found out like snow blindness. I mean, I've experienced a little bit here driving occasionally in the winter, especially if it was blizzarding. Nothing like up there, like pure white. Everything is white, and like your eyes start to hurt because you're trying to focus on something and trying to like have something to see, but you can't because it is all white. So different. Yep, so got to do that. Went to the Anchorage Museum, which was kind of like a smorgasbord of cultural museum, as well as like a kids discovery kind of center, as well as an art museum. So that was fun to do. Went to the drove down towards seaward from Anchorage along that highway, which is along the Cook Inlet, I believe, down to Alyeska. There's a ski resort there. That drive is gorgeous. I could see that being so beautiful in the summer. Not that it wasn't gorgeous while we were doing it, but it's like the mountains are just diving into that inlet. So like you have water and then you have a mountain. And it's very, very, very pretty. And I imagine that like in spring and summer when everything is somewhat in bloom, that would be a really pretty drive along that way. Anyways, got to the Alyeska Resort, went up to the top of the mountain, saw people skiing down the mountain. The views were gorgeous up there. This is a very common theme apparently in Alaska. Everywhere you went, like, it was gorgeous. But also saw people skiing down and went, yeah, no, I have nowhere near amount the skill level that would be needed to do this. Like, nope. Nope, not for me. And then we kind of finished up our week exploring the Anchorage area, and then we started going north. So we had a package from the Alaska Railroad, so you could buy packages from them, and this package took you from Anchorage up to Fairbanks on the train. So it's a 12-hour train ride. It is a very long train ride, but we were very lucky and we had gorgeous weather. And so you got to see so much on that way up. We happened to see double sheep out of one of the area, like in one area along the Denali National Park. We saw some moose along our trip up. Saw the different mountain ranges that it travels by, the rivers. Got to see really good views of Mount Denali as we were going along. It was a really neat train ride. And very slow, so I got some pretty good pictures. Yay! Once we got up to Fairbanks, we then took a bus. Well, a tour vehicle, which was like a retrofitted tour bus kind of thing. And we went from Fairbanks up to the Arctic Circle. So that was a day worth of traveling. Seeing the change is really cool, and like our guide talked a little bit about like hoarfrost, which is something that you really can only see in the winter there around the Yukon River. Got to pass over the Yukon River. Actually got to sled down onto the Yukon River, walk on it. Really fun trip there. Got to the Arctic Circle, and then we met another bus where we changed. Saw the sun setting over the Arctic Circle, and then continued up to Coldfoot, which is a 24-hour truck stop / hotel that is the only truck stop / hotel in like 200 miles in either direction. Because you're taking the Dalton Highway, which goes, like, you have the Elliott Highway, and then the Dalton Highway comes off of it, and it goes up to the very top of Alaska, up to Prudhoe Bay, which is where a lot of the oil reserves are. And so, like, the highway goes along with that pipeline that's coming from Prudhoe Bay down through Alaska and eventually gets to the Valdez port, which is where they take all the oil away from it. So it's a very, very, very long highway, and it doesn't have a ton of stops on it because it's, except for the odd tourist bus that kind of goes through, there's not really a ton of traffic. There's not a bunch of people who live off of that area. So you have truckers and you have a couple of tourists, typically. And that's the only things that are traveling along this highway. So they took us up to Coldfoot, where we had a couple of activities that we were going on. One of the activities that we did was a quote-unquote safari. So, what was the mountain range? I'm missing the mountain range. So there's the Alaska Mountains, the Chugach. So we went through like 3 mountain ranges. The Chugach ones were the ones around Anchorage area, and we went through those. Then you had the Alaska range, which is where Mount Denali is in, and we went through that. And then Brooks, there we go, found it. So we went further into the Brooks mountain range, like all the way to the very end of it. We actually were able to see the Gates to the Arctic, which is a national park, the least visited national park in the United States, because there's no direct access to said park. In order to get in, either you have to park somewhere off of the Dalton Highway, hike 5 miles to get into the national park, or you have to get flown in there and dropped off, and then hike your way out, essentially. So we could see it, but we did not go in it. So you have the Brooks Mountain Range. So we went all the way up through the Brooks Mountain Range and up into the tundra. So like you got past the tree line. So for a large portion of our driving that we were doing, we're in the, is it the boreal forest? I believe it is. So there's a forest ring around the Arctic that covers 3 continents. So you have North America, Europe, and Asia. So Siberia, like Sweden, Norway, Canada, and Alaska. Like there's this really large forest that kind of rings the Arctic Circle. And then once you get at a certain latitude, I think it is, latitude or longitude. I think it's latitude is this way and longitude is that way, but I'm not entirely sure. Whatever this one is, I think it's latitude. Once you get to a certain number, right, the trees they don't get enough sun for long enough to sustain themselves. So because of that, like, you have a tree line that ends. So we passed the last lonely spruce, waved goodbye, and continued on through the mountains. But you got up to basically the tundra area, and you can see, like, the start of the tundra. We didn't get into the tundra, but we got on, like, the edge. So you see the end of the mountains, and then you start to see, like, this plain. Like, it's kind of like a hill up to the top, and then I think it just kind of flattens out there. So that was really neat. Really enjoyed that. And then that was close to being the very end. We got to do a dog sled ride with the tour group, or the tour company. Got to see the Northern Lights, which was the whole reason why we were doing this trip. 2 nights of the Northern Lights, and got some stunning pictures. Like, they were right there on top of you, and, like, they're very, so, like, you look up to see the Aurora Borealis, not the Northern Lights up there, because you're not looking north, as I was told. But you look straight up, and they're right there over top of you, and it's like this band across the sky, and it's green, and it moved, and at one point it was like you were getting pink bands along the bottom. It was really, really, really neat. So we did achieve the thing that we went to Alaska to do. But then we did dog sledding, and then took a small plane back to Fairbanks. We're in Fairbanks for a little bit, kind of walked a little bit around the city, and then from Fairbanks back to Anchorage, and then Anchorage back home. So very jam-packed 2 weeks in Alaska. Enjoyed it. Highly recommend. If you ever want to go to Alaska, go. Like, it is cool. And although I am not I don't enjoy the cold, going up in, like, the end of winter, beginning of spring, that was a very good choice for us, because we found out, like, some of the things that we were able to do at this time season you can't do in the summer. But I do want to go back at some point. I have other places that I need to see first. This would be once I see some of these other places, we'll circle back, maybe, and maybe try and see it in, like, the summer where there's green stuff growing, because you had the spruce and you had the evergreens, and that was it. They didn't have any of the other things growing, and supposedly all of those will show up at some point too. But yes, highly recommend. If you want to see pictures from it, those are going to go at the end. I'm going to put up pictures of my current projects, and then we'll have a reel of roughly 200 pictures. Yep. I took way more than that, but that was what I put up on Facebook for all of family and friends to see, so that is what will go up here as well. So if you're interested in seeing those pictures, stick around to the end. Not that it's that far from now, but, like, there's a couple of pictures that will happen before, and then you'll be able to see Alaska. So that was my personal news, and that is what I was frantically knitting those gloves for, because, like, I needed something besides the gloves. So I had some thin gloves, and then I had those, and that, like, really kept my hands really warm, even in the far north where it was pretty cold. So that is kind of a summary of all the things that have been happening in my life-ish. Do I have any plans? Not really. I finished my test knit I applied for another one. If I get that test net, I'll do that. Otherwise, I have one project. I have that oatmeal sweater that I really want to finish. That's kind of my next main project, and then I have a sweater that I'll start after that. So those are my knitting plans. Cross stitch plans. I would like to work a little bit. I'm gonna work on my mandala that I've been working on. Hopefully next time I'll have finished another large chunk. I have so much stitching though left. So much stitching left to do. It's a 200 by 200 piece. So it's a big piece. Yes, I went big. But because it's so big, like, I still have tons of stitching left to do. So much stitching. So I would like to get, I don't know, if I could get a quarter of it done, like get one section, I would be real happy with that. That Poppy, hopefully next time Poppy will be finished. If it's not, bug me about it. And yeah, you've heard me talk about WIPGO. Maybe I'll try and get some of those goals done, especially the ones that I haven't finished yet. So that is where we are. If you're interested in seeing pictures of things closer up, that will be coming up next. Otherwise, have a good week, have a good day, have a good weekend. Enjoy doing whatever you are, and I'll see you next time. Bye!